Hey, welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. Keep your own counsel. Now, this is something that you would think most people would say, well, I keep my own counsel. That's a fancy way of saying make up your own mind about stuff. Keep your own counsel. But people don't do this. I tell you why, because they've been conditioned. We all have, by the way, except you and me, okay? Present company accepted, of course. You and me, no problem. But the rest of these mere mortals, which we are burdened with surrounding us, they're not used to making up their own mind. And if you listen to motivational speakers, one of the things that they absolutely emphasize is always find a mentor. And if you do this, unless you are very secure in your own opinion, you will find that you are working for your mentor. Now, a real mentor will give you your head. They will say, this is what could happen. Now, what do you think? Give you an illustration of that. I was trying, when I was bringing up my son, here in America I'd arrived with a 6-year-old boy, and I was struggling as a single parent, and so I actually wanted that young boy to be able to fend for himself no matter what. And so I made sure that he actually thought analytically about the things that he was asking me should he do. So very often if he said, what do you think about this? I'd say, what do you think about this? And I would try not to evaluate for him. Now, one time that came about was he was beginning to want to go to a party, a kids get together. Now, he was still waiting for approval of his green card, even though I had long been a citizen. So he's waiting for his green card. Now, when I went to be sworn in on my citizenship, I listened in on some of the interviews, impromptu interviews, just standing behind a desk. The immigration officer would answer different comments, different questions. And one question was a Mexican man who was asking, would he be able to get citizenship? And it turned out that he had a moving violation. It may even be a DUI, in other words, drunk under the influence. And the immigration officer was very blunt. He said, it may be 4 or 5 years before they will look at you. And it turns out that for some other unrelated thing, in other words, you haven't been a terrible bad guy, not the DUI, but for instance, if you could have a parking ticket, and they would actually be influenced by that. There'll be somebody there when you go for your interview that will look at you and say, no, I don't like you, so I'm not going to say yes. And in immigration, nobody ever questions the decision that one person will have made on you. No matter how insane it is, they will not be required to justify their decision. Well, my concern would be when my son tells me that he's going to a party, a get-together of youngsters. I know two things. Somebody will have brought booze. It's I'm not a golfer, but isn't that what they call par for the course? They're going to have drink there. Now, what goes with drink when teenagers get together? somebody will have a pill to pop, right? Now, if the noise gets too loud, somebody, funny how this somebody gets around, isn't it? Somebody will complain. Some neighbour will complain, especially if there were no parents who were present at this. Let's face it, teenagers in America, boy, I know that when I left and went on a trip to China, first thing that my son Luke did was hold a party. So, how did I get him to take responsibility for what may happen without telling him, don't do this? Well, he knew that his application for a green card was under review. We still didn't have it. He would probably eventually, well, did actually have to go for an interview. So I said to him, look, you're going to go to a party. And I said what I've just said to you. Booze, drugs. Now, if you are there when the noise gets too loud and there are drugs or booze, all illegal, when the police come to check it out, if there's no parent there, they will gain entry to the house and then they'll do their search. And they're not exactly always the good guys. So, if it so appeals to them, somebody is going to have drugs. Now, if you are there, you will be guilty by association and you'll be taken in. Now, depending how the cards fall, you may end up with, quite unfairly, you may end up with a charge for possession. Who knows? So, here's what may happen. If you end up with that charge, when you go for your application, it will be denied. If you've got a drugs charge, 99% chance it will be denied. So, ask yourself this. Do I want to stay if I see, and it's very clear when it's happening and there's no adults around, do I want to be guilty by association and lose the right to live in what has become my home? Those are your choices. Would you agree? And he said, yes, I would agree. So, I said, now you know. Do and behave accordingly. And I never had any problem like that with him. And so that was the way that I chose to make him keep his own counsel. Now, if you think that you haven't been conditioned in any way, a lot of people who have very, very, perhaps very high esteem, self-esteem, and are adamant, no, I'm not, I think for myself, I don't allow anybody to condition me, I'm not one of the dogs. Okay, there's all kinds of conditioning that you're unaware of. And the most obvious one that I've learned, which is very simplistic, I know, but if you're waiting to go into an elevator, supposing you're on the 4th floor and you're waiting to go down, right, you press the down button and sure enough the light comes on and then you'll see that there is a elevator on its way. Now, if there's 3 elevators and you've got nothing to do and they're all in the stratosphere at floor 30 or something, you'll go along and you'll press all the buttons and then you'll say, well, whichever one comes first, I'll get it. So you're standing there deep in thought and then suddenly you hear bing, and without even thinking you will move to the one that pinged. That's conditioning. Now, just think what's happening when you're watching television and you tune out and let commercial after commercial after commercial drive its way in. Think what it's like when you fall asleep in front of a television. Think what that's like. All of that stuff is going in. Now, very often if you're a guy suddenly on his own in a supermarket and you need washing powder, you'll be going, well, hell, what kind of washing powder do I need? And then something for a Tide commercial will go ding 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 ding, and you'll buy Tide. But you're not conditioned, okay? So if you think that conditioning generally is something that doesn't affect you, do you still hear the voice of your mom when you go to do something? Like when you have too many cookies? I know that my mother was terrifying. My mother could be taking a snooze in the living room when, as a little kid, I went into the kitchen and I reach for the cookie jar and I hold it up like this, and as silent as the grave, I crack the top off. Terence, what are you doing? That woman was a witch. And I still hear that kind of thing in my head. I still hear my father. Still hear my father when he's been nagged to death by my mother and he's sitting by the fireplace and he puts his hand on his brow like this and he says, "Ah, if ever a man suffered." I still hear all of those things. And I hear things which I am supposed to do. I hear things from school. I hear things from other kids who told me I couldn't do anything. I hear things from priests who said it should be this way or that way. I hear from teachers who said, no, I don't think I would try to be an engineer if I were you. You've got no idea. And I hear those things. And those things you play over and over like CDs, and you play them. You don't think you play them? Let me give you another example. A friend of mine who had come out of a bad marriage with somebody that was quite suppressive, who was someone who suppressed their creativity, their joy, their happiness, and was just bad news. And she was talking about it, and she said, you know, he used to say, and then she went off, and she told me exactly what he said. She knew it word perfect. This is what he used, can you believe this is what he used to tell me? And I'd listen. And then she'd say, and another thing he used to tell me. He said I couldn't. And she told me that story as well. And then she told me another. And then I said to her, did he really tell you all of these things? And she said, yeah. I said, why do you think he would do that? Well, he wanted to put me down. And by telling you these things, using these words, what did he do? Well, he put me down. He put me down because he told me I couldn't do this and he told me I couldn't do that. And I heard it so many times, it affected me. I said, now, is this man still in your life? Absolutely not. Do you think I'm crazy? But his words are still there. Well, I was just telling you what he said. So his job was putting you down, I asked her. And she said, absolutely. And now you are doing that job for him. And she said, no, I'm just telling... No, if the words had the power to put you down, and you are repeating those words over and over in your mind and to anybody else who will listen. You have been conditioned to repeat those words. Now in some beliefs they call this, well, in some ways of thinking, they call this limiting beliefs. These are beliefs that you've been saddled with. I've heard various parents who had a talented artist, and the talented artist kid said he didn't want to draw anymore. And when they asked him, it turned out that his teacher, who didn't actually like him much, had said, "You'll never be an artist." And the kid accepted it. See, so good and bad, you're playing over those records. And I always liken these records as, do you remember when you used to watch or listen to radio? And the DJ or the presenter would have little things that he had on an old-fashioned tape about as big as this. And he would have them installed in various machines around him, that all he had to do was press a button, and when that button went down it would go radio ba dee 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 ba doo doo dee, and then he would just continue talking, and then if he got another little gap it would go ba da doo dee da doo doo dee da doo dee, and it would go over and over, because it was a closed loop thing. It was a circuit that played over and over whenever he wanted to fill in. Whenever he wanted to fill in and didn't want to think, he would press that little circuit button and it would go ba ba doo doo dee da doo doo dee da doo dee. Now, replace the music for "You'll never be able to do this. I don't believe what you do. I can't believe how stupid you are. You are never going to get anywhere if you don't behave this way or that way. Or don't you do that ever. Or if that's Mrs. Jeffries, tell her I'm not here," where you were taught how to lie. So all of this wording is what has now become passing as your counsel. Oh, what do I think about this? Well, my dad always said to me, "Never trust anybody that's got a red nose," or something like that. And your mother said this, and your teacher said that, and your brother said this, and your best pal said that, and then somebody else who was very jealous of you said something else. And all of that stuff is whirling around in the head. And every so often you press it like that, and it gives you the equivalent of ba da doo doo dee da doo doo dee da doo doo. You're no good at anything. You can't do that. And all of those people are no longer in your life, but then they don't have to be, do they? When they were there, they used to put you down, and then when you got rid of them, what did you do? Da da doo doo dee da doo doo dee da doo dee. You played their records. And you did their job, which was what? To put you down. So, here's a thought. Don't put yourself down, because there are so many people that you have met throughout your life who will pop up in your head like ghosts and put you down for nothing. So, how do you get rid of that? Quickly. This is how I think it could be done. It's only my opinion. But if you've got various voices in your mind, at one time when I considered trying to think all of this through for myself, keeping my own counsel, I stopped asking people for their advice. I noticed two very important things when I asked people for their advice. if they had the sharp intake of breath, and then the down, if you ask them, how would I do this? You're planning on doing that yourself? Are you insane? There was that one. And then loosely dividing them into two, there was the other one. And when you said, how would I do that? It would say, you're going to try this on your own? Right? And you think you can do it. You're right. It's not that hard. And then he would walk you through it. And so you would come out with that advice on the good side, on the winning side. Now, for me, if you can reach those decisions without hearing all of the voices, and that was where it led me, that I realized that if I could just stop the bedlam that was in my head of all of those voices, good, bad, different, and the ugly, then I might be able to just decide for myself. So I took a paper and pen, and I sat back and I listened. And I listened, and I listened. And then the voices begin to make themselves heard. Why are you doing this? It's not going anywhere. Excuse me, who are you? This is your mother speaking. Mom, you gotta go. And mother went. As a force of negativity in my life went. I still loved her, still thought of her like that. And I still heard the positive things that she told me when she wasn't feeling a little down herself. And then I went back to listening. Somebody else said, you'll never be happy. Oh God, who are you? I know who you are. You're the guy who sat next to me at school, or you're the woman that could never stand me. You're my sister, you're my brother, you're my uncle. And finally, as all of the voices were identified and shown the door of my mind, I finally had to look around for the different voices. Yes, I know that. Yeah, just be quiet. And I got those. And then in that eternal search for ourselves, remember that? I'm going on a long trek. I want to find myself. Well, you don't have to look very far actually, because you're up in there and around. It's all around. And once you've found out who you're not, the only one that's left is you. So, then you can actually ask yourself, what do I think about this? Well, as long as nobody's looking, I like it. Good. You finally made your own decision. And it will get better, and it will get easier. Anyway, what do you think of that? What did I do? Mother, you're back again. This is a foreigner in the Philippines. Please like, comment, subscribe. And if you know someone who can't make their own bloody mind up about anything, send this video to them. Bye for now.